dreamt of working with brands like HBO or WhatsApp? Well, today's guest has. I'm your host Mandy, and today we'll be talking to an entrepreneur with, at the young age of 21, built a thriving community of Nigerians who are working in non-traditional careers. And more than that, she built a thriving community. Please join me in welcoming E, the founder of NigerCom, to the show. Hi, E. Thank you so much for joining us today and telling us a little bit about your business, about building NigerCom and your journey. It's lovely to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Mandy. This is exciting. I love AMAKA. I love the crew. So this is amazing. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I'd love to hear more about what your journey was like. How did you go about identifying that this is something that we need in the market? What was that initial road for you to even build it and bring it to life?
Yeah, I love this question. So NigerCom started when I was 21 years old. That was my last year of undergrad university. And I was really looking for a community that showcased like individuals in the Nigerian community that were pursuing non-traditional routes, but also I wanted it to have a huge media presence and be involved with creating content for brands as well. So like have that community side, have that brand side as well. So it manifested because for me growing up, I didn't really see enough representation of Nigerians pursuing non-traditional careers. And when I mean non-traditional, I'm talking about, culinary or graphic design or music or sports. And I didn't see that representation like really glorified, like how certain other career paths are glorified and celebrated. So I really wanted a whole space that cherishes this overlooked community. And then also I'm really big on community service and impact. So I wanted a space where like we poured into individuals that were doing all these amazing things and supporting them, providing them with resources, connecting one another. So that's how it manifested. That's like the short version of that.
Well, getting into like a little bit of like the journey. So you're just finishing school, and how was that? You are, well, I mean, like juggling the school and the building of a platform. And I know now you're also doing a lot of like brand work. What was that like journey from being a person who's in school? What were the first steps you took? And then when you started pitching brands, what were the things that you were doing?
Yeah, it was really difficult. I don't know if I would recommend it to people. But like being a student, like I'm big on community. So that's how I saw it. NigerCom originally started off as a passion project. Then it turned into a business when we started like receiving more clients and more projects and everything. And it wasn't easy because when you're 21, you're still trying to figure out life. But also you're exploring the things that you're passionate about, the things that you like and dislike. Balancing both was really difficult. I would say one of the most difficult things I've had to do in my life, especially in my career. But I feel like if it's something worthwhile, something that means something to you, it's worth the journey, worth the passion, worth the good and the bad. Like your why is really powerful. So I always try to stick with that. And then working with major brands, like in the beginning, again, I didn't have the blueprint of like how to navigate working with brands and like deliverables and invoices because I was 21. And so for me, it was a huge learning curve, but it taught me a lot at an early age. It provided me with a lot of discipline, a lot of learning lessons, good and bad. And I think it all worked out. And so some of the brands we worked with have been HBO, WhatsApp, Black Ambition, which is founded by Pharrell, I Stand With Immigrants, and more. And we've worked with like nonprofits. We worked with like major companies, media companies especially, and it's all been really cool, I would have to say. And working with them on their campaigns and their projects, especially ones that pertain to the African diaspora, has been everything. Like I didn't know there was a world like this, so I feel like it all worked out in the end. But yeah.
And how did you go about like sending out that ask? As you mentioned, like you're young. How did you go about like pitching platforms like WhatsApp or pitching all of these NGOs that you got into work with? What are some of the lessons that you would say, like if you knew at 21, like they would have helped make the journey a lot easier for you?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. I would say well, I'll answer the first question by saying like, when it came to approaching brands, I started off my career in PR. I majored in public relations, minored in marketing. So I was learning what went into marketing, what went into like pitching brands and brand partnerships and events and all these different things. And I was very curious as a 21-year-old. I'm still curious now, but back then I was super curious. Like, I like to know how things work. How did this brand collaborate with this brand? How did this campaign happen? Or how did this community donate to this organization, and all those different like fundamentals. And I would always like Google research, but also I would always advocate for myself, and I would reach out. I think like a lot of the opportunities in this world that are amazing are the ones that you create for yourself, or you co-create with other people. And for me, I love reaching out. I love partnerships. I love meeting new people, especially founders and creatives. So I was never shy to reach out or anything like that, and like build a relationship from there. I think a lot of the things that we do like in media is very relationship driven. And so you will foster a lot of things and create a lot of incredible things when like you have a good relationship with people. And so for me, like meeting the WhatsApp team, like there are people that I had similarities to, whether it was being African, whether it was, going to this specific university or working with this people, there was a lot of similarities. And also like a lot of people are really supportive. I didn't like, when I reached out, I didn't say like, oh, I'm a student. But I think some people probably knew, maybe they didn't, but I think they just really liked my media background and what I really created and created with other people as well. And there's this quote by Virgil, RIP to Virgil. He would always say like, use your brand as your resume. And so I'd always like use Najicom as like, this is what, I can do. And this is what my team has done. This is the work we've done. It's like our Instagram's like our portfolio, and like, our website's like our portfolio, and all these different things. And so that kind of speaks for itself as well. Not just me reaching out, but like the work that we do speaks for itself. So I think that's one of my biggest advice for people, not just people who are young, but anybody in general. Yes, you can reach out. Yes, you can ask for these things, but make sure your work can back it up. Make sure you're a reliable person. Make sure, you are who you claim to be, right? Because that's everything.
I love everything you just said. I think starting with like researching and knowing who you want to reach out for, the collaborations they've done. I think a lot of times we miss that research phase. And also there is a saying like closed mouths don't get fed. And you talked about like advocating for yourself, putting yourself out there and creating the opportunities for yourself. So I think like that's really, really powerful as well. And you have been featured in places like Forbes and like Afrotech. Like, how did you also nurture those relationships? You did mention that you have a PR background. Like, what would, if you had to be like, these are my 5 tips that I would say if you want to nurture relationships, if you want to create those big brand collaborations, this is what I would advise you.
Yeah, I would advise people, whether you're a founder or creative, whether you are African or any other like ethnicity or woman or man, like make sure you create a digital footprint, right? And what I mean by that is making sure your presence online is, it exists, it is shown. I think something that's really like a misconception, a lot of people think because they have like 10 followers or 100 followers, they think they don't have a brand, and that's completely false. Everyone has a brand, right? Some people have a bigger brand than others, but you have a brand and you have to understand how to leverage it. You have to like utilize it for your greater good, because again, like you mentioned me advocating for myself. And the reason why I was a big advocate for myself is, one, no one can advocate for you like you can advocate for yourself 24/7. You have to be your biggest advocate, your biggest cheerleader, right? And like you have to establish your presence. You have to speak on the things that you do. I think in the beginning when I was creating Najicom, I was really like, I was more introverted than I am now. I think I'm a mix now, like an ambivert. Or I would say I'm like an introvert that's good at pretending to be extroverted. But like I pushed myself because again, no one's gonna like speak on my work like I can. No one's gonna speak on like Najicom's work or like me and the team and everything like that. Like being that advocate, right? And it doesn't have to be featured on CNN or anything like that. It could be your own Instagram, your own website. You can create your own app. You can create your own like portfolio and let it speak for itself and put it out and share your work, because you never know who's watching. And that's the reality of it, right? You might have a video that has 6 views, but one of those views could be a potential partner or potential client, and that could change the dynamic of your work and also your personal and professional life. So make sure you create that digital footprint, and that's free. You don't have to pay a lot of money to establish your digital footprint and establish your presence online, right? That's something that's purely organic, and sometimes organic can be way better than paid depending on how you leverage it. So that's one of my biggest pieces of advice.
I love that. That's so powerful. Like organic can be way better than paid if you leverage it correctly. And that is so true. And using your own brand as your own storefront, like you're your best marketing person and you really embody that. Like I want to be involved in your brand just because you are a good person as well.
You're always welcome, Mandy. You're already a part of it.
That's so awesome. And what are some of the challenges that you faced early on as you were building, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Wow, that is so deep. That is so deep. I would say one of the biggest challenges, and this is something, it never gets easier, but whenever you're going through something personally, mentally, right? Like you can't always like take a break. Like, yes, you can take a break from time to time, but like when you're running a business or you're running a campaign or anything, there's a lot of things that depend on you. And like you can't like if you're going through something mentally or personally, you can't take a break for like 5 months. And you know, there's always going to be someone who relies on you for something or somebody's just relying on you or depending on you. And you can't like pass it over to people all the time, right? And sometimes you need to give that final say for certain things. And I would say, that's one of the most difficult parts is like, how do you balance both worlds when you're going through something personally? How do you still show up for your business or your campaign or your project or whatever endeavor you're doing? How do you still show up and balance both? Because life can be hard personally, and there's no blueprint that prepares you for every single thing. Sometimes you have to get creative with it. You have to be the one who, you know, sets certain boundaries, or, you know, you have to pace yourself and figure out what works for you and what works for the brand. And also the team as well. You have a team that relies on you, especially. So that would be one of the most difficult things. I think another thing is like when you're working with people, whether it's a client, team member, or whatever, figuring out like, okay, the people that you're working with, are they passionate about the idea of working with you or the idea of working for this brand? Or are they also passionate about the work as well? Because there are people that are passionate about an idea, passionate about what something looks like, but they're not passionate about the work that goes into it or the work that produces it. And you have to decide as a founder or as someone who's leading a project, like, you know, which one is which, because that can affect the trajectory of a brand or the trajectory of a campaign.
That is so true. And I guess it leads actually into my next question. You spoke about your team and people who rely on you. This will be two parts, but like the first one is, as a founder, how did you get to a place where you felt like, okay, I'm ready to hire people? How did you get prepared to do the hiring process? I think a lot of business owners may be nervous when they're taking that first step, or might even hire the wrong person to start off. So what was that process for you? Who were your first hires? Who were the people you were looking for? And how did you make those decisions? And what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I would say like for me, when I first started Najicom, I was doing it solo because again, it was just a passion project until we got our like first client. And when we got our first client, I realized, oh, this is bigger than me and this is beyond me, especially when our community was growing too. I was just like, oh, like this is like, it's no longer my passion projects, no longer like the thing that like I care about. Other people care about it as well. And other people have ideas. Other people, you know, are part of the community and they want to build and stuff like that. And then I had to like switch my mindset of like, okay, it's not just about my idea. Sometimes it's about so-and-so's idea or this person's idea, right? And I think the first role I was looking for was who can like also be a part of the brand, like the social part of it, where you're interacting with different guest speakers we have on our platform or helping with coming up with creative ideas. So I hired like strategists, I hired like community managers, I hired moderators, I hired people who like have strengths that maybe I don't have, or they have strengths that can complement my strengths as well. I think that's something for founders and creatives to think about. Like when you're building anything, think about like, okay, what is the skill set I could work on? And who can I hire that can like complement that can do that skill set and kind of like be like maybe the left brain to my right brain or the right brain to my left brain. Who can I build with? And I think a lot of founders, they don't really think about like, okay, hiring people that might be smarter than you or might be as smart as you. I love learning from other people. I don't care if they're smarter than me or not, or whatever the case may be. Everybody brings something to the table, and there might be something somebody brings that I'm not the strongest at. Like, for instance, like, I'm not the best at moderating, right? It may seem like I'm a good speaker, and I can do the part, but like, I get super nervous with speaking in front of crowds, right? So that's not my thing, and I don't really care to have that skill set. But I think it's important to hire people who maybe they have that skill set, they can do it better than you. I feel like everyone on the team is a better public speaker than me, and I'm okay with that. I love that. So I think that's something to think about, like hiring people that like can complement you, hiring people that may be smarter than you. Maybe they might be an expert in something that you're not an expert in, and growing together. My biggest advice, it stems from like my last piece of advice, hiring people that like are passionate about the work, not just an idea. It's more than just an idea that brings work to life. So making sure you are focused on that.
That's awesome. And when you have, let's say, the stack of applications or DMs or people reaching out to you, how do you choose who's the right fit and who would basically fit into one, the culture in your business or the mission and what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like to look at people's work. I know a lot of people can be great speakers and they can speak on what they do, but I like to visually see it, because sometimes what people say might not align with what they're doing. And like, again, I worked in PR, I worked in marketing and advertising, I worked with startups, I worked in venture capital. And so I know what a good salesperson looks like, or someone who's good at promoting something, but the work can speak for itself. Because, you could say like you do X, Y, and Z, but your work might be, mediocre for what we're doing, right? And so that is something I pay attention to, the work. I also do love people who like, they talk about their work experience, and people who like, they're passionate about what they do, right? Because it can align. Like if their work is great and they're passionate about what they do, that's something that's really important. I look for people who are really passionate about the African diaspora. That's a requirement. And because what we do, it pertains to not only the Nigerian community, but the African diaspora. We have events where it might be specifically about Nigerians, but we also have events that are specifically about the African diaspora, or sometimes we donate to organizations in the African diaspora and do initiatives such as that. Whether you're Nigerian, you're Kenyan, Ghanaian, like it's something that's really important, because that is the core of what we do. Stuff like that. And then also looking at like, what are their time management skills? What other ventures are they doing, right? I like people who like, they are passionate about other things as well, because that can pour into the work that we're doing too. What is something that they're passionate about that they're doing, whether they're working on it professionally or it's just a personal like side project or passion project. Like I love learning about what people are motivated by. It's really inspiring.
I really love that. I think I even saw on your title on LinkedIn, like the Chief Dream Officer, like you're passionate. And I think that's always important to pass down into your team and the people that you're hiring. Getting back to marketing, you talked a lot about like being intentional about what you put out in terms of like your Instagram or your socials, and also creating a footprint online. What are some of like the advice or considerations you would give to people when they're thinking of like, okay, I'm starting my Instagram from zero, I want to build it up, I want to build a website? What are some of those advice or things that you learned as well along your journey?
I love that question. I would say, social media can be a little intimidating, it can be overwhelming, but if you make it your own and try to navigate it in a way that's personal to you, it's not as bad. When you're starting off on social media and LinkedIn, it might look a little weird when you start off with like 0 followers, but I would say start off by following people start off by following people that you admire. I get inspired really easily by the people around me, especially when it comes to the African community. I love learning about what people are working on, and I love looking at people's work. So like following not only the brand, but even the founder or people on the team, and just seeing like, how they do things, and also like what inspires them. And also a lot of these like people share opportunities, whether it's working with their brand or whether it's like things that inspire them as well. It gets you really motivated, and also it shows you the possibilities of what you can do with what you're doing. So I would say follow the people you admire or you're inspired by, and never be afraid to reach out. I think some of the best opportunities I've received are the ones I either created or co-created with other people. But it started off with reaching out. Like those are the best opportunities, the ones you can create. You can't wait for somebody to pick you for things, right? You might be doing a lot of amazing work, but like there's some people who might not notice, or maybe there's some people who see it, but maybe they don't know you're open to collaboration, right? So sometimes you'll be surprised when you reach out to people. They are open and they're so willing and they want to be involved with what you're doing and they want to grow with you. So you have to reach out, you have to form those connections organically. And you don't have to wait till being in like an in-person event to do so. You can reach out on LinkedIn, reach out on Instagram. Like I always tell people my DMs are always open. I don't respond quickly, but you will get a response from me like within a month. And I will always like be like set up a call with people. A lot of people get impressed that like when I like set up a call, I move really fast and I find their email without asking them. Because you know, success has a need for speed. And also it's just like, you know, you're forming relationships with people. And that brings me to my next point, like don't have a big ego. Like I think it's something really special when you have like, yes, you have confidence, but you also have some humility. Like you're not afraid to like get your hands dirty and be a part of the work process. Like I think the best people are the ones that are self-starters, the ones that are involved and they're not afraid to like roll up their sleeves and get involved in the work. I'm not a fan of people with huge egos and they feel like they're too good for a lot of things. Like I'm just not a fan of it. So like lose the ego and make sure when you're working with people and getting to know people, like put your ego to the side and like actually genuinely get to form a relationship with people. People love individuals who are like that. It fosters the best types of relationships.
That is very true. Like connecting with people on a human to human level, I think sometimes we really think of people as numbers or opportunities, but the human connection is like the most important. And that would always lead you to the most success because you're just being a kind person and kindness comes back to you. I think value twofold as well. So I really love that. You did mention co-creating some opportunities. Can you tell us a little bit about what those opportunities were, what the collaborations were, and how that went as well?
Yeah, I would say some of my favorite like campaigns, like for NijaCom. And I know this probably might be, I don't know, I don't want partners and people to be like, why is that your favorite, but this one's not your favorite? But I would say a few of my favorite would be the WhatsApp work, working on like the social media campaign for Giannis's film, Niger Odyssey. And just working with that team, they're really amazing. And like, I just loved how that work really centered around culture and community. It was more than just basketball. I feel like when people like feature Giannis, it's always about basketball. And don't get me wrong, that's important, but like who he is as a person, his identity is even more important because that fuels basketball. It all like aligns. And so getting to know his roots, getting to know his culture, like not just being Nigerian, but also being Greek and playing basketball in America, like the duality of that. It was really inspiring and it was very relatable as well. So I love that our team was involved in that one. I would say Black Ambition is one of my favorite pieces of campaign work. Their mission is so powerful. They provide funding to Black and Hispanic entrepreneurs because when it comes to like the VC world, like the disparities are huge in regards to funding that goes towards like Black and Hispanic entrepreneurs. They receive less than 1% of VC funding in the States. And it's a small percentage and it's very, very sad. And so seeing organizations that are trying to be involved in the change, creating solutions that like really affect a lot of our communities is really important. And so creating marketing initiatives and being a part of their campaigns was something that was really, really important, and spreading the word in regards to what they're doing, because they're still fairly new, but what they're doing is super powerful, and letting other founders know like, hey, this is where you can get more funding. This is a resource. Being a part of something that's powerful, that is everything. When me and the team are talking, we talk about brands that are like not just creating cool products, but how are they pouring back into communities, especially communities that involve us as well? And how can we share that with our community? Like the social impact is really important. We're not here to just like market people selling cups and pencils and like, how are we pouring back into our community, especially the African diaspora? That's really important because the African diaspora pours into a lot of other people, right? And so how are we getting organizations and people to pour back into us? Because that's really, really important.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I love your mission, and that is really at the center of everything that you're doing, because it is super important. And it's also central to the work that we're doing at AMAKA. The disparities are real, especially even for content creators, and really having initiatives that are trying to close that gap, that are trying to make sure that our people, our communities are taken care of is super important. And I love that you're doing that work. I do want to dive in actually how you are partnering maybe with creators. You mentioned on our previous call that you do work with freelancers a lot. What goes into selecting creators or freelancers for you? And what advice would you give to creators for basically shining or being seen in a market that might feel like it's overcrowded or there are a lot of people competing?
Oh, I love that. That's really cool. Like, so for Nigicom, we're always working with freelancers. We always hire freelancers. So if anyone's open, they can always reach out. But what we're looking for in freelancers are people who, like, again, like your work speaks for itself. And like, also, you don't have to work with major brands. We don't care about that. We care about the quality of work and what you're doing and why you're doing it. So your why has to be powerful. What you're doing has to be important. We don't care about the major brands and everything. Yes, we've worked with major brands. Yes, we've been featured here and here and here, but at the end of the day, we care about the human aspect of things. We don't care about the superficial stuff because that's not what drives the work and what really pours back into our community. So that's what we look for first and foremost. And we like to look through like portfolios. We like to look through your presence as well. Like, you don't have to have 1 million followers. We don't care. But like, what are you posting about? What are you thinking about? All of those things are really, really important to us. And so that's what we look for. And then I would say for advice on like for creators on how to navigate a market that might be really like huge or whatever. At the end of the day, like, yes, you're gonna encounter a lot of people maybe doing similar things as you, but you are a unique person. No one is exactly the same as you. You should be thinking about like, okay, if I'm selling the same product like so and so and so and so, how can I make my product differently? Who is my target audience? And that's something a lot of people don't like to think about, or they don't think about that too in depth. Like, who is your target audience? Like age group, race, right? Like, who is the model of your target audience? Because a lot of people like to sell things and they think about like, oh, everybody's my target audience. And it's like, no, not exactly. Like, everyone can buy from you, but who are the people you're targeting? Who do you want to cater to when it comes to your product, and who do you want the focus to be on? That's really important because that also stems into your why. And then also, again, like, you have to be super creative, with no pun intended. Obviously creators are creative, but you want to create something that stands out, create something that has meaning, that has value. Don't just create like a t-shirt brand just because you see people making money off t-shirt brands, right? That's not a strong enough why. Those types of things really like die fast, right? If you're just creating like a t-shirt brand just because so-and-so made $1 million, like, that's not going to take you far because you're not really passionate about like t-shirts or whatever. You're passionate about like the idea of making $1 million, and that doesn't work out for everybody. Like, sometimes success is not overnight. It might take 10 years, 15 years to really, do amazing things and really accomplish some of those milestones. For some people, it might take 1 year. The journey is differently. But let's say if you weren't able to be paid for what you're doing now, would you still do it? I think that kind of stems into your why. Like, again, when Nigicom started, it started off as a passion project. I didn't think I could monetize that or turn that into a business or work with freelancers and work with all these different team members. I didn't think about that in the beginning. It just so happened to work out this way. But in the beginning, it was purely just a passion project. And if I made money from it, that's a plus as well. So again, it worked out because Nigicom turned into a business where it's like being monetized, where I get to pay people, right? So like, again, like, your why is really important. And also, how do you stand out? When I started Nigicom, there wasn't a blueprint. I didn't see like people who were like, okay, yeah, they're catering to non-traditional sides of like the Nigerian community, catering to like the creative side of the African diaspora. And then also, you're creating content for brands. I didn't see that business model. And it's honestly a very non-traditional one. So it's just like, sometimes, you might want to create something and you might not see that visual representation, and you might be the one who has to create it. So if you don't see something, be the one that creates it, right? It might not be easy. You might not have all the answers, but grow as you go. That's what's really important.
I love that so much. And it's true. They do say like, if you target everyone, you target no one. and really getting into the nitty gritties of who are you serving, who are you creating value to, because at the end of the day, each product or service is value in exchange. And what you're speaking about passion as well is super important, because it does take years, even if you're building as a creative, even if you're building as a brand or a business. And looking forward for you, what are the next steps or the future? What does that look like for you?
Ooh, wow. I always think about this. I'm a qualitative person. I'm not big on like quantity, right? Like I love the quality of things because I think the quality can really enhance all the other areas of a business or a project. I want Najacom to continue growing. I want to foster more relationships and build more brand partnerships. And like for me, every year I get surprised by who we work with, what we do. And I think that's the most exciting part of it. Like you just never know how like next year will be and who you'll meet. And it's really exciting. I want Najacom to continue growing. I want Najacom to continue pouring back into African diaspora, not just in regards to amplifying people's work, but also financially too. Like whether it's like pitch competitions, whether it's like, donations, whether it's, investing in like startups or individuals, like that's something I want us to continue like fostering and growing. So in the impact, it's mainly the impact of it that I really care about. So that's what's next. And honestly, I want everyone to stay tuned because again, it's never a dull moment and every day looks different for us. So, but I just know it's always going to be amazing and it's always going to be fruitful. So that's what I look forward to.
I love that. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to add, any last minute tips, advice that you would give to any brands or any creators watching?
Yeah, I want everyone to like stay connected with AMAKA. Like you guys are doing amazing things. And I just want everyone to like stay tuned with that, stay connected because what you guys are growing is really, really important and it's impactful. And I want everyone to know that like, in a world that we live in, things can be very difficult and people might not support you in everything that you do. But like first and foremost, create the things that you care about, create the things that are important and go from there. And you will eventually get that support. I think something that discourages a lot of people is some people think they're not good enough to do this, or they think they're not popular enough to do this, or they don't have enough money to do this. Start with what you have and go from there. Like not everyone starts off with like the resources and all those different things. So you have to figure it out. You have to create from scratch. You have to work with people who are in a similar point as you and grow together because you'll be surprised at what you create together, especially for creatives, right? Like that there's a lot of things that you have to like do organically or do early, and then you'll receive the perks and the benefits from there. So I really highly recommend people to like, start with what you have and grow from there. And don't be afraid to like foster those relationships. Don't be afraid to create something from scratch, right? And create from a passionate place and an authentic place. That's my biggest advice when it comes to that.
Thank you. And thank you so much for creating the time, for joining us today. Please let everyone know where they can find you, follow you, or check out any of your content.
Yeah, I'm easy to find. I'm always online, so people can follow me at ENO period X on Instagram. They can follow me on LinkedIn. It's Eno Odwok, so it's ENO ODUOK. Where else? People can follow Najacom on Instagram. It's Najacom on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and subscribe to our newsletter as well. That's in the link in our bio. But yeah, and if anyone needs anything, they can reach out. Like our email is info@najacom.com. And then whoever like is, responsible for that type of email will, reply back. But yeah, and always happy to meet a founder or a creative. So yeah, you can DM me, reach out to me. I'm available whenever, and I'll always respond back. It won't be the same week, but I will respond back within a month for sure.
I love that. Like we've got the 1 month, just like it's your responses coming.
It's like I try to respond back as quick as I can, but sometimes like the DMs can be over flooded, and like I try to spread my time where I can, but you will always get a response back from me.
I respect that. I respect that. And like as you mentioned, you're always looking for freelancers as well. So people can always just reach out to you. I think also we'll be doing a few things together with AMAKA. So watch out for that and stay tuned. But thank you so, so, so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you as well. And thank you to the team. I really appreciate y'all.
And that's a wrap on another insightful episode of Founders Journey. We hope you found today's discussion as inspiring and informative as we did. Remember, navigating the startup world can be challenging, but you don't have to do it alone. If you're looking for a way to connect with top talent and streamline your hiring process, we highly recommend giving AMAKA Gigs a try. Our platform makes it easier than ever to find and manage freelance professionals who can help turn your vision into reality. So why not take a moment to explore AMAKA and see how we can support your journey? And as always, stay curious, stay driven, and keep innovating. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you with us on the next episode of Founders Journey.